The next thing that we have to figure out is how to write the equation of a parabola when you see it on a graph or when you're given information about it. So this one, you see a picture of it, and it tells you that the vertex is at 2, 1. It also gives you that y-intercept, 0 and 13. You could be asked the same question to write the equation just by being told that it has a vertex of 2, 1 and a y-intercept of 0 and 13, or you could just be given the parabola without any points marked for you, and then you'll look for those points. But either way, it's the same process. We're going to start with vertex form for a quadratic, which is y equals a x minus p squared plus q. So looking at the graph, we look for where the vertex is, 2, 1. That's P and Q. So P is 2, Q is 1. We can fill those into the equation. So I'll go y equals a x minus 2 squared plus 1. Now you might be able to look at it and by seeing the shape of the graph know what A is, or we can calculate it. And most often we're going to calculate it. Basically, if you see that it has a 1-to-1 ratio, like it goes over 1, up 1, then A is 1 or negative 1. If it goes over 1 and up, what does this one do? It looks like it goes over 1, up 3. I'm not sure. Maybe you know what that A value will be, but it's not going over 1, up 1, so I know A is not 1. So we need to think about how can we figure out what A is. We're actually going to use what we have here, this y equals a x minus 2 squared plus 1, and we're going to solve this for A. But if we want to solve for A, we don't want x and y in there. We want to replace x and y with something. What can I replace x and y with? 0 and 13, right. This 0, 13 we're going to use as x and y. You could use any point that's on the parabola. But an easy one to use is always going to be the y-intercept, if it's a whole number. Because then when I fill that in the place of y, I'm going to put, what do I put in the place of y? 0 or 13? The 13. We still don't know A, but in the place of x, I'm going to put the 0. And it just simplifies things by having a 0 there. It'll still work either way. But now what I have is 13 equals, this 0 minus 2, that's negative 2, and then square it is 4. So I have 13 equals 4a plus 1. And all I'm doing is simplifying the stuff in the brackets and squaring it to get the 4. And instead of writing A4, I wrote 4a just because that's the way we're used to seeing it. But now you have just a simple linear equation to solve. How do you solve that linear equation? Subtract 1 from both sides. So I get 12 equals 4a. Divide by 4. What does a equal? A equals 3. But by doing it this way, algebraically, we get the exact value of A. And it's not always going to be a whole number. If it is, it's kind of easier to pick it right off the graph, just because it looked like it went up 3 when it went over 1. But it's not always easy to pick off the graph like that. If we solve it algebraically, then we know for sure we have the right answer. So now the question is, what is the equation of that parabola? Y equals 3 x minus 2 squared plus 1. And that's the answer for the equation. So this one we're given a vertex of 3, -2. Remember, that's the P and Q value. And this 0, 4, those are the X and Y values. You don't need to use the Y-intercept, but it usually it's easier if you do, because it gives you that 0 to calculate with instead. So we're going to go Y equals AX minus P squared plus Q. Again, that's always the form we're going to start with if we want it in vertex form. And most of the time we're going to use that anyway, and then just convert it if we need to. So the Y value is 4. We don't know A. X is 0. P is 3. And Q is -2, so I'll just put that in as -2. You might have put plus -2, but I'll just put it as -2. Then I'm going to simplify. This gives me, so -3 squared is 9. A minus 2. And then to solve for A, add 2. 6 is equal to 9A. And then divide by 9. A is equal to 6 over 9, or that reduces to 2 over 3. I want you to leave it as that fraction instead of changing it to a decimal, because if you do, you'll be using a rounded value, but this is an exact value. So we'll leave things as exact values whenever we can. The answer for what the equation is Y equals 2 over 3 X minus 3 squared minus 2. Here's the last one that I have. This one we're not using the Y-intercept as the X and Y value. Can you tell why? It's because it might be hard to see from where you are, but it's not an exact value. It looks like it's -5.5, but I'm not sure that that's what it is. So we're going to use these points that we do know. So we have -5, 7 for the vertex, and -3, 5 for the X and Y value.